Friends, I'm Pastor Jonathan. It's great to be with you today. So one of my happy places, besides among you, of course, is my backyard, which I know is very suburban of me. But one of the reasons it's become a happy place for me is that, led by my wife, Lindsay, we're slowly turning it into one big pollinator patch. Each year, we till a little bit more grass and plant a few more seeds, and on many days, especially during the summertime, the place is just brimming with life, and it has less grass to mow, and so it's just a win-win all around. But if you sit long enough, the birds and the hummingbirds stop by, the bumblebees and the honeybees and the green anole lizards. But our favorites are the butterflies. Those monarchs especially. Part of the beauty of the monarch is that they're gorgeous, they're colorful, they're stately. And part of it is that a visit from a monarch is a special thing. If you see a monarch here in Richardson, it's in the midst of an epic journey from its annual migration in its wintering grounds in the central mountain forests of Mexico, up to the northeastern United States and Canada, a journey of about 3,000 miles and back again. And so when you see a monarch, you're glimpsing a traveler, a pilgrim on an epic journey, stopping just for a little while among you to find rest and sustenance and a little bit of energy to keep going. So last week I was in my backyard, and just for a moment I put my phone down, not real long, but just for a moment, I set it down long enough to watch a few monarchs fuel up as they headed back home, and just wondering at this epic journey that's bigger than me, and even bigger than one monarch itself. The journey of the monarch, as well as the seeds that were planted that grew into pollinating flowers that made that moment possible. Those are all acts of hope and faith, and something beyond what we can see right now. Faith that if you head out on a journey or scatter some seeds and keep going and keep watering and nurturing, that you'll find the place, or you'll create a place of belonging. In many ways, we're all on these epic journeys of becoming and belonging, these journeys of faith and hope for something that we can't quite see in fullness. Maybe it's what brought you here today. There's this personal journey that we're all on in our lives. And there's also the collective journey that we are on toward a more just and equitable world, toward equality and rights regardless of gender, our identity, race, or status. Maybe it's just believing that if you keep showing up to early marching band practice, that one day the tubas will stop running into each other. Right? There's all these journeys that are bigger than us that we just have to believe in and have faith in, even for tubas, when we can't see where they'll lead or how they will resolve. But something pulls us forward in faith and in hope and in love. And it compels us and it calls us towards something more, to keep going even when it's hard. And so how do we do that? How do we stay forward-leaning when the world feels like it is pulling us backwards so many days? So we've been reading from this letter in our scripture library that we call the Letter to the Philippians, written by this guy named Paul to his friends in the city of Philippi. In the section that we're looking at today, Paul is writing from jail hundreds of miles away. And in this section in the letter, he's reflecting backwards on his faith journey. And he's looking forward and leaning forward in faith and hope and love toward what lies ahead. That looking backward and leaning forward at the same time posture is something that I love about this church and community. We welcome each other's stories and the winding paths of the past that have brought us all here today. We honor that and we respect that journey of each other. But what's beautiful is what happens next. It's the fact that that story doesn't end there. It continues as we seek to find hope and healing and help and purpose and perspective and people to journey with and the steps ahead, as we find belonging and becoming and this call to build something together, to recognize that we're all on a journey, unfinished, but united, and choosing to lean forward together. And that's exactly what Paul is writing about. He's not hiding the messy parts of his past or pretending that he's arrived at some spiritual finish line. Instead, he's honest about being unfinished while also being utterly committed to continuing on the journey forward. And so listen to how he articulates this in Philippians chapter 3, beginning in verse 13. He says, "Beloved, this one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal for the prize, for the heavenly call of God in Christ Jesus." Paul says something that sounds almost scandalous. He says, forgetting what lies behind. This doesn't mean that we ignore our history or pretend that our past and all of the hurts along the way didn't happen. Paul's not advocating for some spiritual amnesia in this. Instead, what he's talking about is refusing to let the past define the future. Paul had a lot of past to get stuck on. He once arrested and persecuted the very people that he calls friends and community to this day. He could have spent his whole life paralyzed by guilt and by shame, and the community could have held that against him as well. But instead, he chooses, and the community chooses, to give him the space to let his past inform the future without imprisoning his forward journey. He acknowledges where he's been, he learns from it, he makes changes, and then he keeps moving forward. And this is so important for us as individuals and as a community. So many of us, and by so many of us, I mean me, sometimes get stuck replaying the mistakes or the regrets or our if-onlys. And in churches, sometimes we can get paralyzed by the past. You know, those like, we've never done it this way before kind of ways, or you can't think that new thought out loud here. But Paul says, no. We are always following after something that lies ahead of us. Always. So press on. Keep going. Keep becoming. Know that the journey always continues. So the Greek word that Paul uses for straining forward means to stretch forward or to lean forward to what lies ahead. Picture a runner leaning into the finish line, or a plant that's stretching toward the light. It's leaning up toward this destination that is ahead of it. And I love that visual, that in our life, in our work, in our faith, that we're called to stretch forward, to lean forward toward what can be, what will be, and what must be. Because it's not about perfection. It's not about arriving at a destination. It's not perfection or destination, but direction. Paul's saying he knows which way he's headed, and he's leaning toward it. And that's the thing. Despite all of the forces that feel like they're pulling us backwards, we know where we're headed. The more loving, just, free, and equal world that God dreams for us all. The flourishing of each of us in our becoming. And we are called to choose to lean toward it, even when it is not yet in our lives. And I love this idea so much because so much of what we're called to can seem like a high bar, right? Loving your neighbor, loving those who consider themselves your enemies. Some days just being like patient and kind can seem impossibly big. But I can lean in that direction. I can't always get there, but I can lean toward those things. When I'm called to grace or patience or love, I can at least lean in that direction. And when I find myself knocked backwards, I can choose to put the next foot forward in that direction. Tilt the scales just a little bit, stretch a little bit farther than I would on my own by God's grace. And here's the secret about the journey. Every great Olympic race, every great dance move, every moment of transformation begins with a lean, with putting our balance toward what will be. And when we do, God can take us farther and faster than we imagined. But it begins with a lean toward what should be. I used to take this passage in a very individualistic way. Like it was all about my journey, my striving, my reaching the goal. Like, what Jesus was calling me to was to put on my spiritual eye black and get out there and take the world by myself. But this misses the point entirely because Paul isn't writing this in his personal journal. He's not writing a to-do list for himself. He's writing this in the context of community. He's saying we're all in this journey together. The vision of God is bigger than any one of us alone, but it takes all of us supporting each other, leaning forward together. See, Paul was writing this, as I've mentioned, from a jail cell that he knew might be the end of his part of the journey. But he's writing to his friends, his partners in this work, and he's encouraging them to keep going, to keep striving together. And he says, as long as I can, I will do the same along with you, because God's work of love includes all of us, but it's bigger, thank God, than any one of us alone. And that's at the clear heart of the mission of this community. We say that we are a forward-leaning, committed Christian community, opening the door wide for all to experience and embody God's healing and reconciling love. And each part of that is essential. Just those beginning parts, we're leaning forward and we're committed to it, following Jesus beyond where we are today. And we lean forward together as a community, for each other, with each other, supporting each other, and carrying on a little bit farther the leg of the journey together as a community. We are all a part of the journey for all people, working together for the dignity and the worth and the shalom and the flourishing. And it is a journey that continues before us and will continue after us as well. It runs from the streets of ancient Philippi to the civil rights movement in our country, to the steps of our state capitol in Austin, to our homes and our workplaces, and right here at the corner of Coit and Arapahoe, and it will continue on beyond us as well. We can't always see the end except in glimpses, but we keep pressing on together. And that communal power is reflected in the sign that's outside the church that I highlighted this last week that says, "The world is heavy, lift what you can." And the beauty of this phrase is that it echoes the Methodist movement's historic rule of life, kind of our principles that we're called to live by as a community. The first rule is do no harm, and we can probably spend the rest of our life just right there. But the second says, do all the good you can. And I put ellipses there because there's a longer version that continues, that says, do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you ever can. And I couldn't even make it through that without taking a breath halfway through. It makes me tired just reading that, right? Because this is a high calling to do the good we can. Because we can do a lot, and we must, and we're called to. But that little word "can" is important because it also reminds us that there's limits. Do all the good you can also implies that there's good that we can't do. There's so much you can do, but you can't do it all. So our spiritual discernment and where we lean into what God is leading us to is to find the things that we can do and do them. And beyond that is where the beauty of community comes in. We each can do a lot, but we can't do it all. But God's grace, empowering all of us, we can do so much. And together, we can make that journey of 1,000 miles. And so how do we as a community live as forward leaners together? First, we begin with practicing honesty about where we are. We don't pretend that we have it all figured out. We're unfinished, and that's okay. That's exactly where we are supposed to be. And we practice that honesty and humility as a community and as individuals as well. And second, from where we are, we listen for where the Spirit is leading. We pay attention to the voices of those on the margins of our world. We notice where love is calling us to grow and change. And in the words of the great philosopher Ted Lasso, we remain curious rather than judgmental. And third, we lean forward with courage. We take risks for love. We try new things. We don't always get it right or ever really, but we're willing to fail forward rather than succeed safely backwards. And finally, we remember that we're not alone on this journey. We're part of something bigger than ourselves, supported by each other and by all who've gone before us, and with the amazing, uniting grace of God that meets us unfinished and promises to lead us to the place where we find life complete. And as they say, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. Which brings us back to that 3,000-mile migration of the monarchs. See, each monarch only lives a few weeks, believe it or not. And it's not long enough to make the journey in one's own lifetime. It takes 4 generations of monarchs to make the journey from Mexico to Canada and back. 4 times they lay eggs in caterpillars and chrysalises. 4 times they keep going on a journey whose end they do not know, a destination they've never been to before, on a journey their great-grandparents began. Most never see the beginning or the end, but their part in the journey matters. And it's the same for us. Most of our work in this life is without the glory of a beginning or an end. It's the unseen middle work, and it matters deeply. Public theologian Morgan Harper Nichols wrote this prayer for us whose work is in the middle. She says, "Oh, how beautifully your presence matters here, even without knowing what your impact will be through the years. You are a part of the long cyclical journey, flying south, flying north. You always have been a part of how we move forth." Wherever you are, however you're serving, in the middle, along the way, you're a part of this journey of how we move forward. Volunteering in our kids' ministry, you don't always get to see where that journey leads, but one day someone will be standing here thinking of their 3rd grade Sunday school teacher with gratitude for how they helped them fly and move forward. The monarchs head out on their journey, and they hand it to the next generation and those who come after. And they stop by your backyard and bring some beauty along the way, and then they keep moving forward. And when they reach their destination, they carry with them that journey of so many before them. And it's more beautiful than anyone could have ever imagined. It's home for all. And every lean forward along the way, and especially in the middle, has been a part of the journey. And it's the same for us. We're on a journey toward a future that we cannot see. And every day we get a chance to lean toward it Even when the world feels like it's pulling backwards, we choose to lean toward justice and joy and peace, toward welcome and belonging, toward a future of love that wins, toward a home and belonging for all. And as Arapaho, we are unfinished, and that's exactly where we're supposed to be. And we are united on that journey toward a future that we cannot fully see, but we choose to lean toward it with hope. We honor our past, we learn from our mistakes, and we keep becoming. We keep stretching toward God's dream for the world and ourselves included. And like the monarchs, we may not complete the whole journey ourselves, but our part matters. So we plant seeds, we stretch forward, and we keep becoming. In a world that's so afraid of dying that it builds empires of sand, we are a resurrection people, building a kingdom beyond our vision, leaning forward together because we trust in a God that is leading us somewhere good. Let's keep growing, let's keep becoming, let's keep leaning forward toward the beautiful future that God dreams for us all. I want to close with a prayer for us today that captures this idea beautifully. It was written by Cardinal John Dearden, later quoted by Pope Francis. It's called, "We are prophets of a future that is not our own." And this is for us on our journeys of becoming. It says, it helps now and then to step back and take a long view. We accomplish in our lifetime, the kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. No pastoral visit brings whole peace. No program accomplishes the mission. No set of goals or objectives includes everything. But this is what we are about. We plant the seeds that will one day grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something, and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for God's love to enter and do the rest. We may never see the results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We're workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future, not our own. And thanks be to God for that. Amen.